Let's talk about life, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the truth and consciousness. Divinity. Let's talk about God. Let's talk about love.
Welcome to Spiritual Nerd, and I'm your host, Ninette Terhart, and today we are geeking out with Dave Phare. Thank you, Dave, for hanging out with me today. Great to see you.
Thank you, Ninette. It's lovely to be here now.
Yeah, well, all the way from down under. And those of you just tuning in, a little bit about Dave. Dave is the director of the Thetford Foundation, which has just released the white edition of A Course in Miracles. He is the author of the book Truth, the Writings of Dave Phare. And at the age of 16, he expressed to his father, somewhat shockingly, that he wanted to be a holy man. And then at the age of 23, he had his first spiritual encounter, and since then has had many supernatural experiences along the way. Dave is here with me today to talk about everything from Jesus to his communication with what people might call non-terrestrial beings. I love that. Dave, wow. So what, when you sent me some stuff about your experiences and stuff, wow, let's talk about that moment when you said to your father, I want to be a holy man. What was going on?
It's difficult to recall exactly, Ninette, but we were in the lounge room, and I was probably about 16 or 17, and my father and mother were slightly frustrated because of my lack of direction in life. And I remember having this very sort of earnest discussion with my dad, and he just asked me, he said, well, what do you want to do in life? And I didn't have an answer. And then it just sort of blurped out of my mouth, and I said, I want to be a holy man. And then the next thing you know, I burst into tears, uncontrollable sobbing. And I think that was probably the first honest thing I'd ever said in my life.
Wow.
I don't know where it came from.
Just a real authentic moment, eh?
Yeah, one of those moments. Yeah.
So, Dave, let's talk about this white edition of A Course in Miracles. I remember you saying that that's a whole other story.
Yep. Yes, it is a whole other story. Well, what would you like to know?
Well, there's the Course in Miracles that everyone is reading, and then this white edition. What does this mean, the white edition?
Well, the white edition came about as a directive I got from inner listening, and I guess if you're a Course community person, you'd be aware of the Sparkly edition and the the Hewlin Casey edition, and there have been many editions.
Right.
But I was sitting at my computer one day just having a Facebook back and forth with somebody, and I had a vision all of a sudden just in front of me. Everything vanished, and there was a floating image, for want of better words, of a white copy of A Course in Miracles. And there was an image on the cover, which I couldn't see clearly. And then it was gone. And I wrote to one of my old teachers, and I said to him via email, I said, look, I just had this vision of a white copy of A Course in Miracles. And he wrote back to me and he said, I saw that about 10 years ago and didn't do anything with it. So, everything gets collaborated, that's salvation all over. But I sat with it for about 3 days, and I asked, in prayer to be shown what the vision was and what it was about. And all of a sudden I just had this fervor to produce the white edition. And I don't know how to explain that. It's as if I was downloaded with it all of a sudden. And I sat at my computer on my draw program, and I sort of mocked up the cover that I had seen in the vision. I didn't know what the image was in the middle. And it just came, look, it was a dove, which is the symbol for the course. And so I found a dove, and we put the dove in there, and then I had no clue about the content. Because as far as I was concerned, the course was already complete and perfect, and like, what the heck? Am I just producing a new cover or what? And then I heard very clearly the words, remove everything of man. And that stumped me. I had assumed that the sparkly edition was the removal of all the editing and the subtext numerics that the hand of man had put into the course. And so I asked again, what is it of man that I have to remove from the course? And my computer, I don't know if it glitched or whatever, but up it came. And there was a website in front of me, I won't mention which one, which actually told me what everything of man was that had been put into the course and taken out of the course and everything else like that. And I don't know how that happened. It was just like it skipped. And so I hired a secretary and set about to put it out there.
Wow.
So that's it. And I don't think, like in my heart, I don't think it's for wide distribution. I've made it available through drop shipping, I think you call it, through the website, but and it's now in Walmart and Amazon and other.
Fantastic.
Yeah, all of those sorts of places. But I mean, if you get online within the course community, there's a lot of deliberation, which is the original one, and which it doesn't really matter. I don't think it matters at all. It's the workbook, and the workbook in the white edition, the sparkly edition, and the blue book are all the same.
Yeah.
It's like, how many times do you need to have someone tell you there is no world? You know what I mean?
I know. But you know what? One edition will ring for one person and another.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, well, that's great. Dave, now I'd love you to talk about your book, The Writings of Dave Phare, Truth.
Oh.
Do share.
Do share. All right. Well, I guess it's a compilation of things, of events that happened to me, I guess, before A Course in Miracles came into my life and after. But primarily, it's a journal of my experience of transformation, the main body of that transformation, when I first came into contact with the Course, which was 23 years ago, I think now.
Wow. And
I used to wake up at night. I couldn't, like, now it's 4 a.m. here, I've been awake since 3-ish. Anyone in awakening will tell you I don't sleep well, so. Across the board, that is, everybody, so we're all insomniacs. And I used to wander around where I used to live at this spiritual center. I used to wander around everybody's cabins to see if there was another light on and go and find someone to talk to at 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. But most times I would go into the office and just type up whatever was in my head. And man, if you've done that workbook of the Course, there's a lot goes on in the head, this reassociative kind of banter that, one, I am one, everything, and it just goes on.
Yeah.
You got to get to the keyboard, and you have to sort of externalize it there. And so all of these notes, I just kept them over the years, and I was going to throw them out, and then my wife said to me, "Why don't you just put them into a book? Somebody might like to read them." And I said, "Who the hell want to read this raving, this madness?" Because when I look back at it now, it sounds like the mental picturing of a madman. But that's what awakening is.
It totally is.
It's totally nuts, so.
It is insanity. Yeah.
That's the book. Yeah. And there's some good stuff in there. There's the story of my enlightenment, which I guess is the big one. And then there's some other little anecdotes about other spiritual things that have happened. The tale of meeting Jesus on Mount Warning, that was incredible. And
now, can we talk about that? I'd love to just, if you into like,
yeah, absolutely,
Downing the clown on that.
Yeah, okay. Well, just to set the scene, Mount Warning is the first place on the eastern seaboard of Australia that the sun hits every morning. And there are generally people that go up there every morning to watch the sunrise, and it's kind of a spiritual thing, and it's the mountain itself is set in a very spiritual area of Australia near Byron Bay, northern New South Wales, which is, I guess, our Mount Shasta region, or our whatever you guys have over there. And it's also the mountain that in days of old, before colonisation, the Aboriginal men used to take the boys up for their manhood ceremony. They would, and it's a hell of a climb, I tell you. But I'd heard about people having full moon gatherings, and this is before Enlightenment. So I was on drugs, alcoholic, looking for God. I didn't really realize I was looking for God. I was just looking for something. Yeah. Being driven. I was totally driven. Churches, mosques, synagogues, anyone that would talk about anything to do with truth, I was there, And anyway, so I'd heard about Mount Warning, and I had to get out of the city, away from the drugs and the alcohol. So I bought a little house in the country with virtually no neighbors. And the very first day that I was looking at the house with the real estate agent, I walked out to the back, down the little stairs, and my feet became magnetized to the ground, which is something I've read about spiritually in other people's stories of things and testimonies. I couldn't move my feet. They were like as if they were glued. And I found myself staring at Mount Warning. This is before I knew what Mount Warning represented or anything like that. And a little voice in my head, or my own assumption, I guess, or something, said, I have to go and spend the night up there one day, or one night. I have to go and sleep up there. I didn't know why. I hadn't heard anything about the place. It just, that's what it was. And it was about a year between that magnetic moment to when I actually did go up there. And when I went up, I'd met a Native American fella, Joey, who'd introduced me to making medicine bags. I mean, I had nothing to do out in the country. I was a bit of a hippie and a feral and all of these sorts of things back then, and probably still am. I went up, took some medicine bags, I took some incense, and I had a buckskin jacket and jeans and whatever on. And when I got to the top, it was just going on dark, and there was no one else up there. I was all alone. And Joey had told me about totem animals, and I had all these spiritual perspectives in my head, all these things that I thought were spiritual. And I'd also just begun to have a relationship with Jesus, which I didn't even know if that was a valid thing. It was just an inquiry, And when I got to the top, it got extremely dark very quickly, and it started to rain. And at the top of Mount Warning, there is no shelter. None at all. And it became freezing. I started to fear for my health up there. I was drenched to the bone, and there was nowhere to hide. There was just some scrubby little trees and bushes and grass. And I became quite depressed very, very quickly. I was already in an in and out relationship with depression. And so anyway, I had a candle and the incense and some grapes for an offering and things like that, that in my spiritual head was things that you did. And I set the candle to warm my hands, and I'm like this on the mountain, and I'm shivering and freezing. And I tied medicine bags in these little scrubby bushes in the directions of north, south, east, and west. And so I said a prayer to the Great Spirit. I said a prayer to Jesus for direction. And I asked in those prayers for the rain to go away, which was just a drizzle really, but I was soaked through, and for the rain to go away and to have a clear night and all of this stuff. And I curled up in the grass like freezing cold and tried to get some sleep. And about, I guess, 20 minutes later, this big wind just came out and blew the clouds away. It was a perfectly starry night. And then this big black possum, and I've never seen a possum so big as this, but it was massive. Do you have possums in America? Yeah, okay. So this big black possum came over to me and sat right beside me. And I kind of freaked out because I'd been bitten by a possum before. Anyway, I thought maybe this is my totem animal. I don't know. I didn't want to assume anything. But I had a Mars bar, so I opened the Mars bar and I broke it in half and I gave half to the possum, and he sat there holding it in his little claws and he ate the whole thing, and then off he went. And I ate my half and whatever. Right?
I love it.
True story. Right. And then I went back to sleep. And that was that, I thought. And then probably at about 4 a.m. this time, I woke up, I could hear people on the path down below me coming up, and I guess to see the sunrise, right, to meet the sunrise. And so I thought, I won't just be a schmuck. I'll, like it's an intimate thing up here. I'll go to where the track comes to the top of the mountain, which was 10 meters from me, maybe, and I'll introduce myself. I didn't want to have these pregnant moment with these people that I didn't know, So I went over to where there's a chain you have to pull yourself up. And I went over to where the chain ended, and I waited there, and they came up, and I said, "Hi, my name's Dave." I said, "I've been up here all night," and da-da-da. And the first guy said, "My name's North." And then I think there was a woman, and she said, "I'm South, and this is East, and this is West." And they said, "We're the spirits of the four directions." And I stood there for a minute with my jaw like dropped, and I said, "You guys aren't going to believe this, but I tied a medicine bag and said a prayer to the spirit of the four directions last night for a clear night." And we all sort of stood there looking at each other, and nobody knew what to make of it. And they said, "Well, look, we've come up here to meditate on the east-facing platform." They have these kind of like the national parks put these steel mesh platforms there, open mesh. They said, "Would you like to join us?" And I said, "Sure, that'd be fun." And we were sitting on the platform meditating, and I'd only ever meditated before with the Brahma Kumari and a few other different things, and that's an open eye meditation. I'm looking at these four people like this who are sitting to my right, and they've all got their eyes closed, and they're sitting very conscientiously in meditation, and I'm feeling like a real newbie, and so I sat there kind of faking it, like I'm trying to let go of everything, but the whole night itself was just in my head, and anyway, so I kind of got into a bit of a zone, and then the next thing I hear this voice behind me, this woman's voice going, "Oh, look, honey, there's people meditating. Get a photo, get a photo." And I turned around, and there are 4 American tourists clad in this like Nike mountain climbing kind of thing with cameras and everything going on, and like I noticed that the other 4 had completely ignored them. They were so deep in their meditation already. And I thought, I'll just ignore them. And I went back to my meditation. They wandered off to one of the other platforms. And there was already a slight bit of light breaking in the morning. And I remember my friend Nanda, who is a Hare Krishna devotee. Hey, Nanda. He once said to me that in India, people do an open eye meditation when the sun comes up, and it's something they have, and they can stare at the sun without it hurting their eyes. And so I opened my eyes. I could feel the sunlight on my eyelids. I opened my eyes, and the sun was just cresting, like the full sun was just cresting on the horizon. I always feel this when I say this part, As I looked at the sun, the figure of a man stepped out from the left-hand side of the sun, all on fire, like an actual... just having a moment. An actual person, a shape, and held out his hand to me like this into the sky. And like I reached up with my hand to take the hand, And I heard a voice in my head that said, go wherever you want, do whatever you like, just never let go of my hand. And that was it. And then it finished. And that was Jesus, you know. And it didn't look like Jesus, not like in the picture books. You know, you see pictures of Jesus with blonde hair. But I knew it was Jesus in my heart and mind, and the prayer for direction was to Jesus. And so, yeah, that was that. And then the rest of the day passed by reasonably uneventful.
Well, as far as you were concerned.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful. And I wanted to ask you, Dave,
Yep.
when you mentioned about, you know, we know the world's not here, and
Right.
yet we talk about spiritual places. How does that all work together? Like, you know, we know that it's in our mind. So these spiritual vortexes, I'm going to use for lack of a better word, are in
Like
the mind.
Machu Picchu and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, this is all
things we think that are sacred on the world.
Yeah.
Okay, so how that works. Well, I guess however it works for you is how it works for you. I mean, I had my own journey to walk as far as my own realization of self came about. And I guess if anyone had told me that in that instance, Mount Warning was not a sacred mountain, I would have just allowed them their opinion, but I probably would have still kept my interest in it as being sacred, because in my own mind, I was on a sacred journey of some sort, even though I couldn't really put my finger on it, you know?
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that anything in any place only has the meaning that we give it ourselves. Right? And the meaning that we're looking for is actually within ourselves. So we're trying to externalize something that is leading us internally.
Right.
So making a sacred site. I mean, I love the stones. You know, in England, the Stonehenge, and if you go on the moors, there are many Druid circles, and those things hold a fascination for me that it's not there to this day now because of other things that have happened. But I remember being very drawn to them, and so I guess you have to kind of follow the path. I mean, it's a passion. It's something that it's a gentle awakening.
Yeah.
It has to appear as if you're the adventurer and that you're not being led to a certain sense, because that would be an affront to the ego.
Right.
If you just went up to somebody and shook them by the shoulders and said, hey man, there's nothing sacred in the world, it's all within you. No one's going to hear that. You can't. It's like Jesus says, you have ears but can't hear, eyes that don't see. It's like you have to get the results of your own thinking. And I mean, I can sit here and say Machu Picchu, it's not sacred, there's nothing mystical, and Stonehenge, there's nothing there, it's just all in your head, you know, it's an idea. But you're going to go, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Well, Dave, we're going to finish up here soon, but I wanted to ask you,
Okay.
what would be something that you would want to share for someone that's listening, that's, you know, starting on the path, and they, you know, they're curious about stuff, but maybe something that would ring their bell, possibly, you know?
Starting on the path. Oh, well, that's easy. Don't listen to anyone, including me. Let it all go. Just follow your heart. Do what you got to do. It'll bring you to that point of destruction, that point of collapse, that point of inevitable surrender, which is scary on this side, but incredibly beautiful on the other side.
Yeah, it truly is.
It truly is. It truly is. There's that tiny moment of terror, and then whoosh.
Yeah. Now, have you ever gone through, like, you know, the dark night of the soul or the eye of the needle, those sort of experiences?
Oh, absolutely. That was my awakening. And I'm, you know, like 3 days before I went face to face with God and like left the body, left the world, left the physical universe in its entirety, or better, I was awakened from it.
Yeah.
From the dream. 3 days before that experience, I was fetal in my lounge room with a knife in this hand and my wrist, like ready to end it, because I had nothing. And that was the dark night of the soul. And I had nothing left but the prayer of my heart I wanted to know what God was. I wanted to know what I was as spirit. I wanted to be helpful to the world. And I didn't want my life to be empty and meaningless anymore. I just, and it all poured out of me in this huge emotional, and I knew in that moment, and I'd woken up in hospital from a suicide attempt in my 20s, and something in me says, I wasn't really completely serious about doing it then. But I knew that if I didn't get an answer from God in that moment, there was no point going on.
Now, Dave, knowing when once these degrees of awakening, what would be like a rainy day for Dave Phare? Like, do you still go through these sort of tumultuous emotional rides, or would you say that's kind of flatline?
No. I still go through it. I'm going through one at the moment. It's brilliant. I love it. But like, but I see it as an adventure now. Whereas before I was resistant to it. Like now embrace it. It's like, yes, bring it on. It's beautiful. It's like St. John in the Bible. He says, I die daily, and it's like I don't want to sit in some spiritual comfort zone of hey, everything's groovy and aren't we all love and all. It's like, man, let me find my blocks. Let me get my ass out of here. Let me stay in let me stay in this vibration of association with all that is. Right. I don't want to start building more walls and call it spiritual or something like that. That's ridiculous. It's like, look what I've gone through to get to have that experience of awakening. Like,
that's brilliant. I love that.
I don't even know really how to describe that, but it's, it's like, don't get comfortable. Let yourself rest, but don't get comfortable. Take a moment out, sit by the river and relax and enjoy and be grateful for where it is you find yourself, and then keep going.
Yeah.
It's like, whilst you find yourself here in the world with a body, with a vessel, there's still work to do.
Yeah, there's still work to do. That's brilliant. Yeah, it's like the cleanest, messiest situation ever.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's brilliant. Well, Dave, I really want to thank you for your time and your energy and your courage. And is there a website that you want to direct people, or?
Well, we have one for the Thetford Foundation. It's called Finding Me. So www.findingme.net.au.
Okay. Wonderful. I'll put that in there.
It's a work in progress, but what do you say?
No, I love it. Well, I say thank you, and really, really enjoyed this time together. And thank you, Dave, so much. And I love your car, like when you're in the car and you're leaving, like, come on. It's awesome, dude.
Well, there's nothing else to do on the road.
That's so true.
It's like the epistles, they just sort of come.
Yeah. Well, again, Dave, so thank you so much. Well, I want to thank Dave Phare so much for hanging out with me today on Spiritual Nerd. That was really cool and awesome energy. So again, I look forward to the next time when we be geeking out with you.
Let's talk about life, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the truth and consciousness, divinity. Let's talk about God. Let's talk about love.